The air crackled with anticipation. Friday night. Football night. Xposed adjusted his helmet, the stadium lights reflecting in his eyes. His best friend Barta, a towering figure beside him, grinned.
Ready to crush it, Expo?
Xposed returned the grin.
Born ready, big guy.
He felt a surge of confidence. This was their year. They could feel it. The whistle blew, the crowd roared, and the game was on. Xposed and Barta were an unstoppable force, a well-oiled machine on the field. Touchdowns came easy. Victory seemed inevitable. As the clock ticked down the final seconds, Xposed caught the game-winning pass. The crowd erupted. He raised his arms in victory, a wide grin splitting his face. Barta lifted him onto his shoulders, the cheers deafening. This was pure bliss. After the game, the adrenaline still pumped through their veins. Walking home under a star-dusted sky, Xposed and Barta relived their triumphant plays. Their laughter echoed in the cool night air.
Did you see the look on Coach's face when I made that last catch?
Xposed chuckled, his breath misting in the cold.
Priceless.
Barta roared, slapping him on the back.
We were unstoppable tonight.
Suddenly, a blinding light pierced the darkness. It came from above, engulfing them like a giant spotlight. Xposed shielded his eyes, his laughter dying in his throat. What was that? Barta stumbled back, his eyes wide with fear.
Expo, what is that?
He yelled, his voice barely audible over the rushing sound now filling the air. Before Xposed could answer, an invisible force slammed into them. He felt a sharp pain in his head, then everything went black. Xposed gasped, his eyes flying open. He was lying on a cold metallic floor. His head throbbed, and a strange humming sound vibrated through his body. He sat up, his vision blurry, and saw Barta slumped against a wall nearby.
Barta.
Xposed scrambled over, fear gripping his throat.
Barta, are you okay?
Barta groaned, his eyes fluttering open.
My head. What happened, Expo?
Xposed looked around. They were in a small windowless room. Strange symbols and lights glowed on the walls. The air had a metallic tang. Panic welled up inside him. Where were they?
I don't know. We were walking home and then that light.
He trailed off, his heart pounding against his ribs. They were trapped. Suddenly, the room lurched violently. Xposed and Barta were thrown against the wall. A high-pitched whirring sound filled the air, and the floor vibrated beneath them.
What's happening?
Barta yelled, clinging to Xposed's arm. Xposed could only shake his head, his stomach churning. He had a terrible feeling they were in serious trouble. This was no ordinary ride. Through a small, barred opening in the wall, Xposed caught a glimpse of stars streaking by. Stars? They were moving upwards at an incredible speed. Xposed's blood ran cold. They weren't just trapped, they were being taken somewhere, into space. The room lurched to a halt. Silence descended, broken only by the hum of machinery. Xposed and Barta slowly got to their feet, their bodies aching. The barred opening had vanished, replaced by a solid metal wall. Suddenly, a section of the wall slid open with a hiss. A large, hulking figure stood in the doorway, his face obscured by shadows. Xposed and Barta exchanged a nervous glance.
Who is this guy?
Well, we meet again, stepping into the light. He was enormous, with bulging biceps and a cruel smirk plastered across his face.
Looks like we've got ourselves some guests.
Xposed's eyes widened. He recognized that voice. It was Tyler Rosand, the boxer he defeated, known for his short temper and new superhuman strength. What was he doing here? Before Xposed could react, Tyler lunged. His fist connected with Xposed's jaw, sending him crashing against the wall. Pain exploded in his head. He shook it off, adrenaline coursing through his veins. This was no time to back down. Barta roared, charging at Tyler like an angry bull. But Tyler was ready for him. He sidestepped easily, his fist slamming into Barta's stomach. Barta doubled over, gasping for breath. Xposed scrambled to his feet, his vision blurring. He had to do something. He dodged another one of Tyler's punches and landed a solid kick to his stomach. Tyler grunted, but the blow barely fazed him. He was too strong. Despair threatened to engulf Xposed. They were outmatched. Just when all hope seemed lost, a blur of motion caught Xposed's eye. A small figure no bigger than a child zipped into the room, moving with impossible speed. He wore a bright yellow suit and a mischievous grin. Xposed gasped, recognizing the figure. Diddy was a local legend, rumored to possess strange and wonderful powers. But Xposed had always dismissed him as a myth. Until now. Diddy raised his hand, and a beam of blinding light shot out, striking Tyler square in the chest. Tyler roared in pain, his body engulfed in a blinding white light. When the light faded, Tyler lay unconscious on the floor.
My time here is done.
Xposed and Barta stared in awe. Diddy had saved them. But how?
Don't thank me yet, boys. This is just the beginning. You're caught in something much bigger than you can imagine.
Xposed wanted to ask what he meant, but Diddy held up a hand silencing him. Hush, lil bro.
I wish I could tell you more, but my time here is done.
And with that, Diddy vanished in a puff of smoke, leaving behind the aroma of Bussy. Xposed and Barta were left speechless, their heads spinning. They had just been rescued by a mythical being with superpowers, and he had spoken of something bigger at play. What had they gotten themselves into? Silence descended upon the room, heavy and absolute. The only sound was Xposed and Barta's ragged breaths. Tyler Rosen lay unconscious on the metal floor, a testament to Diddy's impossible power. Yet, Diddy was gone, vanished as quickly as he'd appeared. Xposed looked at Barta, his face a mask of confusion and worry.
What just happened?
He whispered, his voice trembling slightly. Barta shook his head, his eyes wide with disbelief.
I don't know, but Diddy, he was real. This is all real.
The weight of their situation crashed down on Xposed. They were trapped on a spaceship, hurtling through the vast emptiness of space, with no idea who had taken them or why. And now, after Diddy's cryptic warning and sudden disappearance, they were left to face whatever came next. Alone. The silence was shattered by another hiss as the wall slid open again. This time, it revealed a figure even more intimidating than Tyler Rosen. A mountain of a man with a greasy uniform strained against his massive belly, a sneer twisting his lips. This was Boomer, the racist cop who tried framing Xposed for hate crimes, and his eyes that burned with a strange red energy.
Well, I've waited a long time to take you out.
His eyes glowing ominously fixed on Xposed and Barta. Xposed felt a shiver run down his spine. He'd heard whispers about Boomer's laser eyes, a rumor dismissed as an exaggeration. Standing before him, Xposed knew the rumors were true. The red glow wasn't a trick of the light, it was a weapon. Without warning, Boomer's eyes unleashed twin beams of searing red energy.
Ooh.
Xposed threw himself to the side, the beams scorching the spot where he'd been standing a moment before. The smell of burning metal filled the air. Barta, caught off guard, cried out as a beam grazed his arm. He stumbled back, clutching his injury, his eyes wide with pain and fear. They had to act fast. Boomer was even more dangerous than Tyler. Thinking quickly, Xposed grabbed a discarded piece of metal from the floor, a shard of what looked like a broken mirror. "Barta!" he yelled, tossing it to his friend. "Reflect it." Barta, his reflexes honed from years on the football field, caught the shard. He angled it towards Boomer, catching the next blast of laser energy and deflecting it back at the surprised attacker. The reflected beam caught Boomer square in the chest, throwing him back against the wall with a roar of pain. The red glow in his eyes flickered and died, leaving him groaning and disoriented. He wouldn't be firing any more lasers for a while. Xposed rushed to Barta's side, checking his friend's injured arm. "You okay?" he asked, concern furrowing his brow.
"I'll live," he said, his voice shaky. "Nice thinking with the mirror, Expo. That was some quick thinking."
They had survived another encounter, but their relief was short-lived. 2 down, and who knew how many more to go? One thing was clear. They weren't just facing random thugs anymore. These were targeted attacks, and Xposed and Barta were the targets. The question was, why? Who were they up against, and what did they want? A tense quiet fell over the room. Xposed and Barta stood panting, their chests heaving from the recent fight. The only sound was the low hum of the spaceship, a constant reminder of their captivity. Boomer, his laser eyes extinguished, lay slumped against the wall, groaning in pain. Barta flexed his injured arm gingerly, his face a grimace.
"Think he's down for the count?" he asked, his voice hushed.
"Who knows with these guys?" he muttered, his voice laced with worry. "But it buys us some time." Time. They had no idea how long they had been trapped on this ship, hurtling through the vast expanse of space. Every passing moment felt heavy with uncertainty, the silence pregnant with the threat of another attack. And after facing down Tyler's brute strength and Boomer's laser eyes, Xposed couldn't shake the feeling that whatever came next would be even more formidable. As if on cue, the lights in the room flickered, plunging them into momentary darkness. Xposed and Barta tensed, their bodies instinctively bracing for whatever lurked in the shadows. When the lights sputtered back on, a new figure stood before them. Gone were the hulking physique of Tyler and chubby Boomer. This adversary was almost unassuming, a slender man dressed in simple, dark clothing with an air of quiet confidence. But what he lacked in physical presence, he more than made up for in the chilling intensity of his gaze. A familiar face, his eyes sharp as ice picks, seemed to bore into Xposed, reading his every thought. This was Ika, the IKEA bounty hunter, but this time seemed to possess superior intellect and terrifying ability to teleport at will.
Tyler, Boomer. They were supposed to soften you up and not get themselves incapacitated. Fools, they always underestimate the power of the mind.
Xposed felt a cold dread creep into his gut. This wasn't just a brute they were dealing with. This was a strategist, a manipulator, someone who enjoyed playing with his prey. "You're wasting your time," Xposed said, trying to keep his voice steady. He knew Ika was trying to intimidate them, and he refused to give him the satisfaction. "We don't know what you want. Just tell us why we're here."
Why, Xposed, this is revenge. Revenge for you taking out my lover. J.D. Vance Couch was everything to me. Eat Barta dick.
In a blink, Ika vanished. Xposed and Barta spun around, searching frantically for him. A heartbeat later, Ika reappeared behind Barta, his hand a blur as he snuck a pressure point on the back of Barta's neck like a little bitch. "Eat Barta dick." Barta crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Panic surged through Xposed. He was out of his depth, completely unprepared for this level of combat. Ika was playing with them, toying with them like a cat with a mouse. And in this twisted game, Xposed feared there would be only one winner. Ika's powers were no accident. They were a gift from Livy Dunn of Ohio, a mysterious figure with unknown origins. During a secret experiment, Livy Dunn transferred her abilities to Ika, making him the formidable force he is today. Eat Barta Dick. Ika straightened up, brushing his hands together as if ridding them of dust.
You see, Xposed, you and your friend are nothing special, just pawns in a much larger game.
He turned back to Xposed, a condescending smile on his face.
But don't worry, your part in this will be over soon enough.
It was that moment, that flicker of arrogance in Ika's eyes, that gave Xposed an idea. A crazy, desperate idea. Ika, for all his intelligence, for all his power, had one fatal flaw. He underestimated his opponents. Taking advantage of Ika's momentary lapse in concentration, Xposed lunged. He didn't go for a direct attack. He knew that would be futile against Ika's teleportation. Instead, he swept his leg in a wide arc, aiming for Ika's feet. Ika, caught off guard by the unexpected attack, stumbled. The look of surprise on his face was quickly replaced by a flash of anger. He hadn't anticipated this. He hadn't expected this level of resistance from someone he considered so insignificant. This was Xposed's chance. Like what the Sigma? What? I said what the Sigma? A moment of opportunity, striking when Ika least expects it. Ika, momentarily thrown off balance by Xposed's unexpected maneuver, struggled to regain his footing. The smug superiority that had been etched on his face just moments before had vanished, replaced by a flicker of fear. He had underestimated his opponent, a mistake that could prove fatal. Xposed pressed his advantage, driving forward with a ferocity fueled by desperation and adrenaline. He knew this was his only chance, a fleeting opportunity to exploit Ika's momentary vulnerability. His fist connected with Ika's jaw, a satisfying crack echoing through the metallic room. Ika staggered back, his eyes wide with surprise and a hint of pain. He hadn't felt physical pain in years, not since he had mastered his teleportation abilities, and the sensation was both alien and unwelcome. He had relied too heavily on his intellect, on his ability to anticipate and control, and now, faced with Xposed's raw, unbridled aggression, he found himself on the defensive. A desperate gamble. Can Xposed outsmart Ika? Xposed knew he couldn't win in a straight fight. Ika was too powerful, his teleportation abilities making him practically untouchable. But Xposed had learned something from their previous encounters. He had learned that their captors, despite their powers, were not infallible. They could be outsmarted. They could be manipulated. As Ika recovered from the blow, his eyes narrowed with renewed focus. Xposed made another daring move. Instead of pressing the attack, he backed away, putting distance between himself and the disoriented Ika. He knew that Ika, arrogant and accustomed to effortless victories, would see this as a sign of weakness, an opportunity to reassert his dominance.
Foolish boy, did you really think you could defeat me? I am Ika, my mind is my weapon, and you are nothing but an insect.
He vanished, reappearing behind Xposed in a blink. But Xposed was ready. He had anticipated this move, his body already in motion as Ika materialized. He ducked low, avoiding Ika's outstretched hand, and rolled to the side, putting distance between them once more. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness, the lights flickering erratically. A low hum, different from the constant thrum of the spaceship, vibrated through the floor, making Xposed's teeth chatter. He felt a presence, powerful and malevolent, enter the room. The lights flickered back on, revealing a figure unlike any Xposed had ever seen. Tall and imposing, clad in flowing black robes, he seemed to give off, quote, hella aura and power that dwarfed even Ika's. His face, pale and angular, held an expression of cold, calculating amusement. This was Xandog, the mastermind behind their abduction, the true power in this corner of the galaxy.
Enough, Ika, your game's bored.
Ika, his arrogance evaporating in the face of Xandog's disapproval, bowed his head.
As you command, big sexy bro.
he murmured, stepping back into the shadows. Xandog turned his piercing gaze on Xposed, a flicker of recognition in his eyes.
Xposed, we finally meet.
Xposed, his heart pounding in his chest, met Xandog's gaze.
Who are you? He asked, his voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor running through his body. Why are you doing this?
Xandog chuckled, a low, humorless sound that seemed to mock Xposed's confusion.
You wound me, Xposed, he said, his voice laced with mock hurt. Don't you recognize me? We've met before, albeit virtually.
He took a step closer, his shadow falling over Xposed like a shroud.
Think back, Xposed, he urged, his voice taking on a hypnotic quality. Last year, the Madden tournament, the championship game.
Recognition dawned on Xposed's face, and his eyes widened in disbelief.
It can't be, he breathed, his voice barely a whisper. It was just a game.
Xandog's smile widened, revealing a row of teeth that seemed too sharp, too predatory.
Just a game? I told you should kill yourself and you laughed at me, he echoed, his voice dripping with menace. You took me as a joke, Xposed, defeated me on a galactic stage, and for that, you pay.
The revelation hit Xposed like a physical blow. Xandog, the mastermind behind their abduction, the being with the power to bend the fabric of reality, had kidnapped him and Barta over a lost video game? It seemed ludicrous, impossible. Yet here he was, face to face with a being of unimaginable power, his life hanging in the balance because of a virtual football match.
You're insane, Xposed spat, his initial fear giving way to anger. You kidnapped us, terrorized us, all because of a game?
You underestimate the sting of defeat, Xposed, Xandog said, his voice dangerously quiet. The humiliation of losing to a child in front of the entire galaxy. He clenched his fist, and the lights in the room flickered violently.
I am Xandog. I do not lose.
Xposed knew he had stumbled upon Xandog's weakness, his bruised ego. This galactic overlord, used to unquestioned power and adulation, couldn't stomach the blow to his pride. And that, Xposed realized, might be their only advantage. Xposed. Xandog raised his hand, his fingers outstretched, and Xposed felt an invisible force grip him, lifting him off the ground. He struggled against the unseen pressure, his lungs burning for air, but it was no use. Xandog was toying with him, relishing in his display of power.
Any last words, Xposed, before I bahish you to skibidi?
Xandog sneered, his voice echoing with cruel amusement. Suddenly, a figure slammed into Xandog, knocking him off balance. It was Barta, his eyes blazing with fury, a shard of broken metal clutched in his hand. He had regained consciousness just in time to witness Xandog's attack on Xposed.
Get away from him, you grown-ass man. Eat Barta dick.
Barta roared, his voice echoing through the room. Xandog, caught off guard by Barta's unexpected attack, stumbled back, his concentration broken. The invisible force holding Xposed vanished, and he dropped to the floor, gasping for breath. Now was their chance. Xposed and Barta, battered and bruised, but united in their defiance against this egomaniacal tyrant, prepared to face Xandog together. The fight was a blur of motion and energy. Xandog, enraged, unleashed his powers, metal walls warping and twisting. Xposed and Barta dodged and weaved through the chaos, returning blow for blow. Xposed delivered the final blow. To Xandog's shock, his powers were disrupted. With a final scream, Xandog's powers overloaded, throwing him back, unconscious. Exhausted, Xposed and Barta collapsed. They had done it. They were going home, forever changed by their epic space adventure. The journey back to Earth was a blur. Exhausted but exhilarated, Xposed and Barta lay sprawled on the metallic floor. The silence, now a comfort, was broken only by the soft hum of the engines.
We did it. We actually did it.
Xposed nodded, a tired smile spreading across his face. Yeah, we did. He agreed, his gaze drifting to the stars streaking past the small view screen. They were beautiful, mesmerizing, but now a reminder of the vast, unknown dangers. The landing was rough, the spaceship shuddering as it touched down in the familiar field near their hometown. Xposed and Barta stumbled out, blinking in the bright sunlight. They were home. Life went on, seemingly unchanged. The familiar routines were both comforting and unsettling. They had seen the universe, faced cosmic horrors, and emerged stronger. The quiet confidence, the unspoken understanding that passed between them with a shared glance. The memory of the spaceship lingered like a half-forgotten dream.